For months, royal insiders have tiptoed around an elephant in the room, hushed conversations behind closed doors, mysterious changes in Catherine's schedule, and senior royals avoiding reporters' probing questions. But now, the whispers have exploded into a royal thunderclap. What was once mere speculation has just been confirmed in the most emotional way imaginable by none other than Prince William himself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It all began with a silence too loud to ignore. Catherine, Princess of Wales, once a near constant presence in public life, vanished from engagements with little explanation. Cancelled appearances were brushed off with vague statements about rest and private time, but the truth lingered just beneath the surface. Behind palace walls, staff operated on edge, delivering hand-picked meals and herbal remedies to Adelaide Cottage, sparking questions even among those sworn to discretion. For some, it was déjà vu. Catherine's well-documented struggles during her previous pregnancies had required similar care. But this time, something felt different, something deeper. Prince William, always polished in public, began to falter. He withdrew from 2 major engagements within days of each other, citing family matters, a phrase that did little to quell speculation and everything to ignite it. His absence was felt not just in presence, but in posture. The quiet grief on his face at a recent charity event spoke volumes, and yet, no one dared say it aloud. Online, the speculation surged like wildfire. Eagle-eyed fans dissected every blurred photograph, every gesture, every word unsaid. A single image of Catherine leaving Windsor Castle coat pressed tightly around her midsection, hand instinctively resting on her abdomen, set royal social media ablaze. Was she shielding something? Or someone? As media outlets scrambled for answers, Kensington Palace remained locked in a fortress of silence. No denials, no confirmations, only the occasional flicker of tension behind staged smiles. It was clear the palace was buying time, but for what? That answer came in a moment that blindsided everyone. William, known for measured words and composed delivery, stood on a modest stage with eyes that betrayed weeks of unrest. As the audience settled in for a routine address, they were met instead with a trembling voice, the kind that signaled not just emotion, but truth, something real, something raw. Those in the crowd exchanged glances as William, for the first time, stepped away from the royal script and spoke from the heart. But no one could have predicted what Prince William would reveal next, not just about the pregnancy, but about the hidden battles Catherine had been quietly enduring. With trembling hands and a voice thick with emotion, Prince William stepped onto the podium and delivered a speech that will be remembered as one of the most vulnerable moments in modern royal history. What began as a routine engagement turned into an unscripted confession that tore the veil off the royal family's closely guarded secret. The room, filled with journalists and charity patrons expecting polished words about healthcare initiatives, fell into an unnatural silence as William abandoned the prepared speech in front of him. He glanced down, collected his thoughts, and then uttered the sentence that changed everything. "I owe you all honesty." Those 5 words sliced through the atmosphere like a razor, catching everyone off guard. There were no press releases, no forewarning, only this raw, unfiltered moment from a future king grappling with the weight of protecting the woman he loves and the truth they could no longer hide. He didn't speak as an heir to the throne, but as a husband and father whose family had endured what he described as a storm behind closed doors. Then came the revelation the world had been aching to confirm. Catherine was, in fact, expecting their 4th child. The air was thick with disbelief, followed by an eruption of emotion as those in the room processed what had just been shared not from a spokesperson, but from William himself, stripped of royal formality. Yet the announcement wasn't cloaked in joy alone. His tone shifted as he detailed the hardship, the sleepless nights, the fear that gripped their household in ways no royal duty could prepare them for. He made it clear that this pregnancy hadn't come without heartache. "It has been far from easy," he said, his voice cracking slightly. He alluded to past complications Catherine faced, the physical toll that shadowed her previous pregnancies, and the invisible strain of being constantly scrutinized by the world. And then, with a pause that felt eternal, he called this unborn child a blessing we fought hard to protect. Not earned, not expected, fought for. In those words, he revealed a war that no one had seen, a war of love, fear, and resilience behind the scenes of polished palace appearances and controlled press narratives. And in doing so, he reminded the world that even within royalty, the human struggle does not discriminate. This wasn't just a family growing, it was a family surviving. William's confession didn't just confirm what the public suspected, it rewrote the story entirely. And while it brought clarity, it also raised a chilling question that lingered heavily in the air. But what was it that made this pregnancy so different and so dangerous that the couple had to wage a silent war just to keep it secret? Behind the palace gates, Joy was met with fear. Unlike Catherine's past pregnancies, this one carried risks that chilled those closest to her. The fourth child, a surprise even to them, came with warnings from royal doctors and emotional scars still unhealed from past traumas. Though the world may have seen smiles and formal waves, the reality behind royal walls was far more fragile. The moment William and Catherine discovered the pregnancy, Joy was tempered by an unsettling sense of dread. The royal medical team, familiar with Catherine's previous battles with hyperemesis gravidarum, raised alarms almost immediately. The condition, which had plagued her during all 3 earlier pregnancies, had taken a devastating toll each time. And now, with added years and mounting pressures, doctors privately advised against continuing the pregnancy at all. But Catherine, quietly resolute and fiercely maternal, refused to back down. Still, this wasn't a decision made in defiance. It was made with courage, knowing full well the risks. William was said to have been shaken, confiding in a few trusted friends about the sleepless nights, the emergency consultations, and moments where he feared for Catherine's health more than ever before. Friends described him as tormented, torn between his role as a future king and his instinct to shelter his wife and family from every danger, both medical and emotional. The pressure didn't help. Even before the news broke, the couple had been grappling with relentless headlines, invasive speculation, and the suffocating scrutiny that has long stalked their marriage. The emotional strain Catherine endured from that constant intrusion became yet another invisible threat to her well-being. It was this collision of physical risk and emotional fragility that forced William to take drastic protective measures. Behind the scenes, there was talk of an early, quiet relocation to Sandringham, a move designed to remove Catherine from the London spotlight and place her in a calmer, more secure environment. Few knew just how serious things had become. Palace aides, acting under strict instruction, began crafting cover stories for her absence, carefully choreographing press statements and schedules to conceal the growing urgency. Every appearance that Catherine missed became another tightrope walk for Kensington Palace's PR team. But no amount of careful planning could mask the reality that this pregnancy had plunged the couple into uncharted territory, a space between celebration and survival, between public expectation and private pain. And all the while, the couple braced against an invisible force that threatened to unravel their fragile peace. Because what they feared most wasn't just medical, it was betrayal. Yet, even as the couple shielded their private struggle, another threat loomed, one that didn't come from doctors, but from inside the palace walls. Not everyone celebrated the news behind closed doors. Sources suggest Queen Camilla's reaction to the pregnancy was far from warm. Whispers of disapproval, fears over Catherine's growing popularity, and an icy exchange during a private meeting only heightened the emotional stakes. Behind the curated public image of unity, a far more calculated struggle was taking shape, one that had less to do with family joy and everything to do with influence, succession, and public favour. Camilla, who had worked tirelessly to cement her place within the monarchy, reportedly viewed the timing of Catherine's pregnancy as a disruption. According to insiders, she questioned not only the wisdom of expanding the Wales family, but hinted that it could complicate the carefully laid plans for upcoming royal initiatives. She was said to have raised concerns directly to King Charles, subtly suggesting that another child could divert attention from the monarchy's broader strategy and, more pointedly, from herself. That suggestion did not sit well with William, who was already emotionally strained from shielding Catherine from the press and internal tension. What began as discreet frustration soon grew into something far more dangerous, a cold war behind palace walls. The Queen Consort's closest aides began circulating quiet criticisms of Catherine's absence, her choices, and the perceived secrecy around her condition. Anonymous briefings found their way into tabloids, framing Catherine's decision to withdraw from public life as selfish or irresponsible. Royal commentators began to echo these sentiments, almost as if on cue. Behind the scenes, the Waleses were furious. The damage wasn't just reputational, it was emotional. Catherine reportedly left a private family lunch early after an uncomfortable exchange with Camilla. Some claimed she returned to Windsor in tears, while William stayed behind to confront the situation. Days later, a senior aide aligned with Camilla was seen having a heated exchange with William at a formal event, an encounter observers described as tense and uncharacteristically blunt. While the public remained unaware of the depth of the fracture, those within the royal circle knew that lines had been drawn. William's protectiveness over Catherine had reached new heights, and the atmosphere between the two households grew colder by the day. Even Charles, known for his desire to avoid internal conflict, found himself caught between loyalty to his wife and the rising pressure from his son. But the real war wasn't being waged in open arguments, it was unfolding in whispers, silences, and calculated leaks meant to undermine. It was clear, this wasn't just about a baby. It was about legacy, attention, and control over a narrative that the monarchy could no longer contain. But amidst the growing palace tensions, one figure emerged with fierce loyalty, someone who had stayed silent too long and was now ready to speak out. The stoic Princess Royal, often silent in family affairs, shocked the inner circle when she issued a statement unlike anything she's ever done before. In a rare moment of personal vulnerability, Anne defended Catherine with words that sent a powerful message not just to the public, but to Camilla herself. For years, Anne had mastered the art of discretion, staying out of emotional disputes and power struggles. But this time, she refused to remain in the shadows. Her written words, measured yet piercing, praised Catherine for her strength, resilience, and grace. Three virtues Anne herself was known to embody, and that made the message all the more powerful. It wasn't just an expression of support, it was a signal that the monarchy's most respected and unshakable figure had chosen her side. She went further, stating that she was deeply moved by William and Catherine's decision to expand their family, calling it an act of courage and conviction. In doing so, Anne didn't just acknowledge the pregnancy, she validated the struggle behind it. The message was received loud and clear across royal circles. Royal watchers and palace aides alike interpreted it as a thinly veiled rebuke to Camilla's cold reception of the news. After weeks of rising tension and veiled contempt, Anne had drawn her own line in the sand, and she didn't stop with words. In a move that stunned even her closest confidantes, she paid Catherine a private visit, arriving at Windsor unannounced, away from cameras and protocol. Inside, sources claimed she brought with her a delicate heirloom bracelet that had once belonged to Queen Elizabeth herself, a gesture laden with symbolism. It wasn't simply a gift. It was a declaration of legacy of continuity. Anne was passing on more than jewelry. She was passing on trust. In this quiet act, the Princess Royal breathed new life into a monarchy fractured by rivalry and resentment. But her allegiance didn't just heal, it ignited. Suddenly, debates about succession, seniority, and the future of the crown were being whispered once more in drawing rooms and behind tightly shut doors. Was this Anne signalling that the Waleses were the future she believed in? Others feared her intervention would further enrage Camilla, who had long been wary of Anne's unwavering independence and quiet influence. Either way, Anne had broken the silence, and her voice, respected and feared in equal measure, carried weight no one could ignore. Still, even as the royal family scrambled to manage the ripples from Anne's bold defense, a far more dangerous threat emerged, one that didn't stem from opinion or loyalty, but from betrayal. Because buried beneath the emotion of William's speech and Anne's fierce support was a question that no one could yet answer. Yet, while family divisions widened, a bigger question emerged from William's speech, who leaked the pregnancy news before the couple were ready to share it. The royal couple's greatest fear came true. Weeks before the confirmation, someone inside the palace leaked confidential health information. Now, the search for the mole has set off a chain reaction, revealing just how fractured and politically charged the royal household has become. What should have been a private and protected chapter in William and Catherine's life was ripped open before they could control the narrative. One morning, tabloid headlines blared with disturbing confidence, citing unnamed internal sources who had allegedly confirmed that the Princess of Wales had been rushed to a private clinic for observation. It was more than a breach, it was an invasion, and it struck at the very core of trust within their inner circle. Whispers began to swirl in Kensington corridors. A long-time palace aide, one who had served loyally under 2 generations of royals, was quietly removed. No public statement, no explanation, just gone. Those who noticed were told the individual had chosen to retire, but behind closed doors, the story was very different. William, outraged and increasingly isolated, ordered a private investigation into palace communications. Phone logs, access credentials, confidential memos, nothing was off limits. This wasn't about damage control anymore, this was personal. According to senior sources, suspicion quickly turned toward an individual with known ties to Clarence House, someone who had long navigated the treacherous waters between the 2 royal households. The implications were devastating. If true, it meant the betrayal hadn't come from a faceless outsider, it had been orchestrated from within the royal institution itself. The leak didn't just break trust. It exposed long-buried fault lines between William and factions of the monarchy still aligned with the old guard. Those fractures, once kept beneath the surface, now threatened to split wide open. The tension wasn't limited to aides and advisors. Even King Charles, usually removed from such operational disputes, was said to have expressed deep concern over the breach. Not because of protocol, but because of what it signaled, that the walls of the palace were no longer secure. The institution that prided itself on control, secrecy, and discipline was bleeding from the inside. For William, it was a painful reckoning. Every effort he had made to shield Catherine, every strategy to preserve their peace, had been undermined by someone who sat at their table, someone who once wore the mask of loyalty. And just as they tried to recover from that betrayal, another blow landed this time, not from within the palace, but from the outside world watching with a sharpened pen and a cruel hunger for scandal. But the media's role was far from innocent, and one tabloid's damning headline nearly destroyed Catherine's emotional recovery before William could intervene. As news of the pregnancy hit the headlines, so did the brutal tabloid frenzy. Catherine was suddenly everywhere, every bump, every absence, every silence picked apart. But few knew the emotional toll it was taking behind palace walls, where Catherine reportedly reached her breaking point. What should have been a moment of private anticipation was twisted into a media circus, with tabloids turning joy into scandal and speculation into poison. One publication dared to call her irresponsible, questioning why a royal would choose to have a 4th child at a time of economic strain and public discontent. It wasn't just an attack on her decision, it was a calculated assault on her character, framed to ignite outrage and drive sales. The impact was immediate and devastating. Witnesses recalled seeing Catherine in the back seat of a royal car, head turned toward the window, visibly shaken, eyes brimming with tears after an engagement in the north of England. That moment, private and raw, spread quietly through royal circles as a chilling sign. This time, it had gone too far. Inside the palace, chaos erupted. The PR team scrambled to steer the narrative, issuing carefully worded statements and coordinating sympathetic coverage. But the damage was done. Behind closed doors, William was incandescent with rage. He had tolerated years of media intrusion, but this was different. This was personal. According to sources, he threatened legal action against a tabloid that crossed an unforgivable line, One headline that suggested Catherine was using the pregnancy to divert attention from deeper royal issues. William's fury wasn't performative, it was protective. He knew how fragile Catherine's emotional state had become under the weight of relentless judgment and betrayal. Friends close to the couple revealed that Catherine began quietly exploring the possibility of leaving London altogether, at least for the duration of the pregnancy. The pressure was becoming unbearable. She needed distance not just from the public eye, but from the suffocating atmosphere of a palace that seemed increasingly indifferent to her pain. It was in this moment of breaking that the Waleses made a decisive move. The palace had planned to confirm the pregnancy weeks later through a formal statement. But that plan was shredded. Instead, William stood before the world and bared his soul. The announcement was no longer a piece of protocol. It became a cry for truth, a demand for dignity, a direct response to the vultures circling above their family. He refused to let the media define Catherine's story. And that announcement, William's emotional speech, wasn't just about confirming a pregnancy. It was about setting the record straight, once and for all. Out of pain came purpose. William's speech marked not just a confirmation, but a rebirth for the future king and queen. As the couple prepares to welcome their fourth child, they also prepare to rewrite the future, one where unity, protection, and love define their legacy. No longer willing to play by the palace's cold, calculated playbook, William made a bold choice: to put family above formality, to reject the tradition that demanded silence in the face of suffering. In the days following his speech, he cleared his calendar of ceremonial obligations, choosing instead to remain close to Catherine and the children. It wasn't just symbolic, it was intentional, a declaration that his loyalty would always belong first to those behind the palace doors, not the expectations outside them. Meanwhile, Catherine's team quietly expanded. More than just doctors, she was now supported by a private circle of maternal health specialists, therapists, and midwives, handpicked to ensure her comfort and security during this high-risk pregnancy. It was a level of care never before seen in royal history, and it signaled something much larger. The monarchy's most watched couple was done playing by inherited rules. They were creating new ones. And in a surprising move that silenced even the harshest critics, the palace released intimate photographs of the family. There were no grand backdrops or stiff poses, just moments of serenity, unity, and a quiet message woven between each frame. The reaction was immediate. Across social media, an outpouring of support surged like a tidal wave. Hashtags celebrating Catherine's courage and William's protectiveness trended globally. The same public that had once dissected their silence was now rallying behind their honesty. For the first time in months, the tide had turned. Royal insiders began murmuring about the deeper implications. If this child could survive the storm of scandal and scrutiny before even being born, perhaps it would symbolize something the monarchy had lost long ago: hope, a clean slate, a future untainted by old rivalries and internal politics. Whispers grew louder within court circles that this pregnancy had not only mended a fractured public image, but had shifted the dynamic behind the throne itself. And in that shift, William and Catherine were no longer just modern royals. They were the new architects of a monarchy in desperate need of redemption. But as they embraced peace, with the storm seemingly behind them, an unease lingered. Because buried in that peace was a revelation no one saw coming, one that could shatter more than just tradition. But even as the couple finds peace, a final twist looms, something that could shake the entire line of succession. Just as the dust settles, new whispers emerge. Is the fourth child destined for more than just royal status? Rumors suggest an unprecedented plan in the works, one that could bypass traditional royal protocols and crown this unborn child with unexpected power. At first, the speculation seemed far-fetched, a swirl of gossip trying to fill the calm after William's emotional speech. But behind closed doors, something more serious had begun to take shape. Quiet conversations between William and King Charles were said to have touched on one of the most guarded topics in royal history: succession reform. With a modern monarchy in mind and a global image to uphold, The father and son reportedly began exploring ideas that would shake the very foundation of royal tradition. And at the center of it all was the unborn child. Sources close to the royal household whispered of plans to grant this baby a never-before-seen ceremonial title, one that would not only distinguish them from their siblings, but position them uniquely in the evolving royal hierarchy. It wasn't just about birth order anymore. It was about symbolism, diplomacy, and legacy. Catherine, too, was said to be deeply involved. Her private meetings with constitutional advisors did not go unnoticed. What exactly she was discussing behind those closed doors remains a mystery, but it sparked immediate speculation. Was she laying the groundwork for something far bigger than just protection and healthcare? The questions multiplied when insiders revealed that these meetings were taking place without broader royal attendance. Then came the more controversial whispers, those that dared to suggest that Prince George's traditional path to the throne could someday be altered, not stripped away, but reshaped. Some theorized the fourth child might be positioned as a symbolic representative of a modernized Commonwealth, blending diplomacy with monarchy in a way never attempted before. Could this child, still unborn, become a unifying figure for a fractured institution? As absurd as it once sounded, the pieces were beginning to fit. William and Catherine had already proven they were no longer content with simply maintaining royal order. They were ready to redesign it. And with the monarchy at a crossroads, this child could represent the bold reset the crown has resisted for decades. The final image many are clinging to now isn't one from a public statement or official portrait. It's a private moment that says everything, Catherine. Serene, placing her hand gently on her stomach, while William stands quietly beside her, not as heir to the throne, but as protector of a future far more daring than anyone imagined. With a fourth child on the way, and the palace walls shifting in silence, one thing is certain: the future of the monarchy is no longer written in stone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.